You can hire people and you can bring them in. You can hire agencies and you can bring them in. There's agencies that will take care of people on a volunteer basis, or you can put them in a facility. So we always look at who is going to be providing care. The next issue is how much care is going to be provided. So obviously, age is on a continuum. And so the amount of care that we're providing today certainly is not going to be the amount of care that we are providing tomorrow. So we want to make sure that our loved one is, first of all, safe. So there's lots of things that you can do if you're going to be taking care of your loved one at home. You can look for basic trip hazards. If somebody's going to be walking or fumbling around, not really sure their steps, we want to get rid of all throwaways. We want to make sure that we have handrails up on the stairs. We want to make sure that we have handrails up on the outside or anything that might become slippery. So if you have a porch that even has one step and you wouldn't require a handrail, you might think about putting one in. We certainly don't want any broken hips. And you can have the bathroom retrofitted with the grab bars on the sides of the tub and front of the shower. And we can look at putting in a unit in the shower so that somebody doesn't have to step over the tub. They're able to get in and out easily and safely. There's actually today, there's regular plug-in lift chairs that work with a normal banister and staircase. So you can plug those in, you can sit down, they can ride down the stairs. And you look at putting in the handicap ramps if you need to do that. Sometimes, if you get a prescription from a doctor, you can actually have Medicare, the person has Medicare, cover some of these devices and improvements. You can go to places like Boscov's and those department stores, have the chairs now that you can plug in and push a button and they will actually lift to help transition. There's lots of places like CVS and most major drugstores will have canes if you need the person to have a cane. So you look at what you can do in the house to keep the person safe. So that's our number one goal. The other thing that will often come up, and people kind of laugh at me when I say this, I haven't been blessed with children yet, but I do have a dog that I love very much, and I got a doggy camera so that I can look in on her one day and see what she's up to. And there's actually, Belkin makes a series of about 6 cameras that you can plug in. They're not video cameras, they're live stream cameras. So if you are going to work, but you're going to be living with mom and having her at home, you want to just be able to check in on her periodically and make sure that she's okay and she's safe. So I would recommend putting one in the kitchen. I recommend putting one in the hallway, one in the bathroom, one in the family room, and this always gets a chuckle out of people. I say, don't poo-poo the idea of putting one in the bathroom, because very often the bathroom will be a scene of catastrophe, falls, and things like that. So we look at what you can do, what can you put in place to make sure that your loved one is okay. And the other thing that I recommend is you have a security system that has a key fob feature. And my late father-in-law did come to stay with us before he died. And we put a little necklace around him with the key fob on the necklace. And he was able to push the button to call the medics if he needed that. So we didn't actually have to get a subscription to a First Alert or any kind of company like that. We were able to buy a $99 fob and put that in place to make sure that we had peace of mind, so that if we were at work, we would be able to know that if he needed assistance, he could certainly get it. So there's lots of things that you can put in place simply and easily if your goal is to keep your loved one at home. And so that's really the first step of the process, is to see what the particular person needs. And again, it's a continuum. They may not have needed cameras when we came to see them 2 months ago, but since then they may have had a fall or stroke. So kind of whatever the client needs to be sure that mom and dad are well cared for is what we would get at the additional need. decision. So there's organizations that you can call who will come over for an hour or two so that you can take a walk, or so that you can go shopping or whatever it is that you need to do. So if they need assistance with that kind of thing, then we can definitely take care of that. Then we look at the legal documents that the person has in place. And typically, everybody who comes in at least knows about a will. So a will is a document that would tell your loved ones what you want to happen to your possessions when you die. Most people don't know that there is actually a statute in place in Pennsylvania which dictates what will happen to your limbs if you die. And if you want something other than a statute, then you need to get a will. The next document that we look to see if the person has is a living will. And a living will is a document which will tell the doctors what you want to have done in the event that you're not able to communicate with the doctor. And that covers all kinds of things. So if you're not able to blink your eyes or squeeze your hand or whatever, to any kind of mental impairment that you might have. So if you don't possess the faculties to make a decision, then you look at the living will. If the living will is not in place, there is now in Pennsylvania a statute that will control the living will type of situation. The next document that we will look to see if the person has is power of attorney. And power of attorney is a document by which a principal, the person who would actually sign the power of attorney, gives authority to an agent. And the agent would come in and make decisions for the principal if the principal is not able to do that. And the power of attorney can be something that's very broad, or it can be something that's extremely specific. So you can have a power of attorney for real estate. So if you want to go to the Bahamas while your house is being sold, you can have a living power of attorney to cover that one specific transaction. A lot of banks will have powers of attorney forms that they use to cover their specific bank accounts. This is the only exception in Pennsylvania to the statute. There is no statute in place that covers a lack of power of attorney in Pennsylvania. So if it's one message you take out of here this evening, is that every single one of you needs to execute a power of attorney right away, and have the other ones do the same thing. If you do not have a power of attorney, what you have to do is go through a process called guardianship. And guardianship is where you go in front of the court, in front of the judge, and you would say that you want to have guardianship of the person. So that's the physical person. That would be, for example, a living will. Or you can have guardianship of the estate. So that's the person's money. So that would be like having a power of attorney. It is a very expensive process. It's anywhere between $10,000 and $15,000. You need to have 2 doctors in Pennsylvania certify that the person is incompetent. And you need to have what we call service of process, so the person actually has to be served with the paperwork. And they have a chance to defend themselves if, for example, they don't think that they are incompetent. And a hearing will be held. I've gone through guardianship a couple times. It's not a very pleasant process. Nobody is happy in a guardianship proceeding. And typically it can be avoided if people would just take the time to execute the power of attorney. Now, there are times where you might have a power of attorney in place and you still need to go through guardianship. For example, if you have, we'll call it a good son and a bad son situation. So where you have a good son who isn't the agent of the power of attorney, is checking on mom periodically, and pulls up to the house one day and sees a for sale sign in the yard. You know, kind of walks in and says, "Mom, the house is for sale." "No, it's not." "Okay, you've got a problem." So come to find out that the agent of the power of attorney was gifting all kinds of money to himself, changing the designated beneficiaries of the life insurance if somebody were to abuse the agency under the power of attorney, there are procedures that you can put in place that can unwind the transactions to be as simple as possible. And so if anybody's having a problem with that, it's not the end of the world. There are remedies out there. It's not the first time it's ever happened. It's been doing people out, unfortunately. Let's see. So we talked about, we talked about basically who's going to provide the care, how much care is going to be on the continuum. So when the status changes, so when clients come to see me, and this is our second thing, so basically we've had a change in status. We look at what are called the activities of daily living, the ADLs. And there are 6 activities of daily living, and it's something that we all do every day without even thinking about it. So when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is I put my feet on the floor and I stand up. That's called transitioning. So transitioning is an activity of daily living. And then I walk into the bathroom. So walking is an activity of daily living. I then proceed to go to the bathroom, which we call toileting. That's called toileting. After I go to the bathroom, I take a shower. So that's called bathing. And then I get dressing. And then I go downstairs and eat. So within the first hour of my day, I've already accomplished all 6 activities of daily living. So when you have a loved one who is having a problem with 2 or 3 or more activities of daily living, then you can look at whether you need to apply for skilled care or not. So when you have a change in status, again, the issue is on the continuum. Keep an eye on your activities of daily living and whether you have changes in your activities of daily living or not. Oh, sure. Sure, no problem. So this is the way I think about the bird. Like, okay, I get up in the morning, I put my feet on the ground, I stand up. That's called transitioning. Okay? And then I walk into the bathroom. So walking and toileting. And then I bathe. Then I get dressed. And then I eat. So those are the activities of daily living. We all do them every day, we don't even think about it. But when you start to have problems with those, again, for Veterans Administrative purposes, we're looking at 2. And for Medicaid purposes, we're looking at 3. And I'll touch on that later. All right. So again, when you come in to see me, we're always thinking that you're okay now, but you're going to be transitioning in the future and aiming for things to get worse. Okay. So let's see. We already talked about a living will. I often will get this question, so I'll just say it now. You know, my dad said he didn't want a feeding tube, and the doctor put a feeding tube in his nose. So medicine actually considers food to be like a prescription drug, and a doctor is allowed to administer medication, and so the doctor can administer food. So as long as the doctor is putting the feeding tube in the nose and going down the stomach, that's not the kind of feeding tube that's anticipated by a living will. They're talking about a surgical procedure where you put a JPEG in, or you sort of have a machine that's feeding you. So do that question all the time. The other thing is the living will, again, only takes effect when you can't communicate with the doctor. So people often ask me about the resolution, in the living will. Well, I'm not going to say that I'm going to do no worries because, they're going to take my words when they get a question. And they're not actually going to do that. Typically, the word for is doing, which is another question I get all the time. You actually have to die in a hospital type of setting because they need to harvest your organs relatively quickly after you die. Otherwise, they're loved ones to take care of an elderly parent. And whether that's,
Send that electronically too.
okay, I'm sorry, well, that's fine. So, again, there's two different things to keep in mind in this type of situation. Some people only care about the income tax deduction. So if you only care about this day-to-day income tax deduction, that's what that article covers. And essentially the article says that it's extremely difficult to pay a family member to care for a loved one and to use that as an income tax deduction. Now, that article was written in 2013, but it actually cited the Internal Revenue Code, and so I thought it would be helpful to all of you, because again, this is another question that I get in my office all the time. The other side to that coin is if you're going to apply for medical assistance. And again, we're going to touch more on this later, but medical assistance is a process where you can apply to have the state cover the cost of skilled nursing care for your loved one. So I'm not going to talk about it right now, this is literally 2 slides for now, I'll talk about it in a second. But in connection with applying or knowing you're going to need to apply for medical assistance, I will often have my clients fill out a family care contract. And my family care contract is literally 20 pages long. It's extremely detailed, and essentially you will come in and see me and tell me the kinds of things that you anticipate that mom is going to need. And I will work a contract around your particular situation. And we have outs in them, for example, if you want to take a vacation, and you bring in somebody to care for mom who pays for the cost of that care. If mom suddenly decides she wants to have food fights every day in the kitchen, and the bed needs to the wall, and now we need to paint the wall in the kitchen, you know, who's going to cover the cost of that care? And I do look at the contract from the other's perspective, and I think about those poor people who were chained in the basements in the Philadelphia homes so that people could collect the money. And you also have remedies under the family care contract in that type of situation. So when you're talking about medical assistance, it is perfectly acceptable for your family member to actually pay them to care for you. And when you come into my office, I actually file a 1099 every year so that the money that you are being paid to take care of your loved one is going to be taxable as far as income tax is concerned. And I do believe that's a big distinction between what I do and what the article says. And when we're looking at how much we're going to pay the person to care for the loved one, we have to look at what that person has done, what skill set does that person bring to the table. So if you have a registered nurse, you're going to be able to pay that person more per hour than you're going to be able to pay a lawyer, for example, because that person brings a particular skill set to the table that would benefit having over somebody who doesn't, like me, have that particular type of skill set. So it is income tax to the recipient, it is tax deductible to the payer, and it is an exception to the article, and it's perfectly acceptable as far as Medicaid is concerned to pay your loved one to take care of you. The only other thing that I recommend before we get to medical assistance is called a family reimbursement contract. And this actually came up with my own family. I never imagined that this would happen, but my grandmother-in-law needed one of those reclining chairs that I was telling you about earlier, and ended up in the chair. It was like, okay, well, the boss volunteer, my uncle didn't have it. Gee, Aaron, can you go pick it up? Sure, I had to drop it to Clear and grandma reimbursed me. It was $1,000. So then found for medical assistance for her a couple of years later, and since there's a 5-year look-back period, the caseworker sees a check and gave carry receipts for $1,000, and that's considered a gift, which is a no-no as far as medical assistance is concerned. It didn't bother me that I lost $1,000, but the fact that something as convenience without having a signed contract, in the eyes of the law, I just thought was absolutely ridiculous. So,
Wouldn't you just be able to show the receipt?
I did. But don't you love your grandmother enough to buy her that chair? I do, but when this $1,000 is going to the nursing home, I can kind of use it. It's kind of how it went. And I ended up dropping it because they did hire me. My family did hire me. They were paying me. It wasn't worth arguing for hours and nauseam about the cost of this chair. And actually, my mother-in-law is currently using the chair, so it was a good investment for us to have paid. But what I thought of is, okay, I'm going to execute a family reimbursement contract right now. And I actually did this in my own family. So that if we children were to buy something for convenience for our parents, then we would be able to show the caseworker that, okay, this wasn't really a fraud, this wasn't a gift, and I want to be reimbursed for $9,000. My husband and I did recently purchase a Nissan 370Z sports car convertible. And my father asked my mother if he could buy one, and she said no. And he told me to use the family reimbursement contract. And use the family reimbursement contract. And I said, I don't think that it's meant for things like that. But if I'm going to BJ's to pick up my grandmother's favorite pins pads that she likes, I should be able to be reimbursed for the $70 that takes. So I do recommend that everybody enter into a written contract so that if you're an agent under power of attorney, you don't get in trouble for writing checks to yourself, to reimburse yourself. Obviously, keep an immaculate paper trail, keep receipts and everything, but definitely consider entering into a reimbursement contract. It's really necessary. So now we're going to talk about medical assistance, since I've been mentioning it all night. So again, there is a process in Pennsylvania where you can get skilled care covered by the state for a loved one. And there are two essential credentials that you need. One is medical, and I cannot control that. I cannot make you any more sick than you already are. Certainly I can persuade you in the worst possible way for needing most assistance, but they do send somebody out from the area exam agent, and they fill out what's called an MA-51 form, which is on your slide. And that's essentially where a doctor in the facility will look at the person, and they'll look at their activities of daily living, and they need to have deficiencies in 3 of the 5 activities of daily living. For Veterans Administration purposes, they actually consider needing to take prescription medication as an activity of daily living, even though it's not recognized on the state side of things. So if you have a person who is a veteran and they were other than dishonorably discharged and they served for 90 days and at least one of those days was during a wartime period, then you can qualify for what's called aid and attendance benefits. And that comes into play when you require regular aid and attendance of the person. So often, the medical assistance and the VA applications will go hand in hand. And aid and attendance benefits are especially helpful if you're caring for a loved one at home. So now getting back to the medical assistance side, we have our MA-51 filled out. That's again the only thing I can't control. We look at the person's income, and the income cap is $1,999 currently. So you're either over or under that figure. If you're under that figure, yes, per month. I'm sorry, yes, per month. If you're under that figure, then you're allowed to have what we call the big assets. So the big assets consist of a $2,000 disregard and a $6,000 exemption, and that's lifetime, that's not per month. Typically, we keep that as cash, because that's the thing that assists most people. And there are exemptions. For example, your home is exempt as long as you check the right box on the medical assistance application. Yes, it comes down to checking the right box. And your car, as long as you're able to drive. If you do not have a driver's license, then the case workers will look skeptically at me saying that your car is exempt. But your car is exempt. And then your household furnishings, your clothing, things like that are exempt. And if you have what's called a community spouse, then what you do is you essentially put all of your assets collectively into a giant black cauldron, if you will. And on each side of that, you put two smaller pots. And one pot is going to be for the community spouse, the spouse that's not in the nursing home. And the other pot is going to be for, I hate this term, but it's legal to use it, the institutionalized spouse. And you're allowed to keep half of your assets, but there's around a $30,000